The year was 2487, and humanity stood on the precipice of a new era. After centuries of conflict and technological stagnation, Earth had united under one banner, the Voidborn Empire. The Empire was an uneasy alliance of Earth's best minds, its most powerful corporations, and its once divided nations. They had pooled their resources, their intellect, and their resolve to create a ship that could break the boundaries of time and space itself. The Horizon, the first human-made faster-than-light starship, was the result. Captain Ilara Jensen stood on the observation deck of the Horizon, her gaze drawn to the swirling abyss of space outside. The stars looked different now, closer, more real, now that they could reach them in a matter of days instead of centuries. The crew, a mix of brilliant scientists, engineers, and military personnel, had been handpicked for this momentous mission. Their task was simple: explore the unknown, push beyond the Sol system, and establish humanity's first colonies in the stars. As Ilara adjusted her uniform and ran a hand through her short-cropped hair, her first officer, Commander Jason Quinn, approached her with a concerned look. "Captain, we're receiving a strange signal from deep space. It's not like anything we've encountered before." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "Can we trace it?" "We're still working on it," Quinn replied, his eyes narrowing as he studied the data on his screen. "It seems artificial, like someone is trying to communicate with us." The captain's pulse quickened. First contact, this soon. It was almost too much to believe, but they had been heading into uncharted space, away from any known civilizations. The signal wasn't coming from Proxima Centauri or any of the known star systems. No, this was something far beyond their reach, a voice from the deep unknown. "Open a direct line," Ilara ordered, her voice steady, but laced with the anticipation of history about to be made. Quinn nodded, and within moments, the ship's communication system came to life. A garbled transmission crackled through the speakers, the voice faint but clear enough to understand. "Humanity, you have been noticed. The universe is not yours to claim. Turn back now, before it is too late." The message ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. The crew stood frozen, staring at one another, unsure of what to make of it. Ilara's hand hovered over the console, but her mind raced. Who, or what, had sent that message? And why? "Captain, are we sure it wasn't some sort of interference?" Quinn asked, his voice low, though he clearly didn't believe his own words. "Something on the edge of our range, like a star going nova or some deep space anomaly." Ilara shook her head. "No, that was deliberate. And it knew who we are. Humanity." She stared out the viewport again, her mind grappling with the implications. Their mission had always been clear: to expand humanity's reach across the stars. But now, it seemed that the universe was far more complicated than anyone had imagined. And someone, or something, was watching them. "Get the signal back up," she commanded. "I want to know more. If this is a warning, we need to understand why. Prepare for course correction. We're not backing down." As Quinn turned to carry out her orders, Ilara felt the weight of the unknown press against her chest. They had broken through the walls of time and space, but what waited beyond the stars might be something humanity was not prepared to face. Somewhere out there, in the cold dark of space, something was watching Earth's every move. And it had already spoken. The message from deep space lingered in the minds of the crew for days after the transmission had ended. "Humanity, you have been noticed. The universe is not yours to claim. Turn back now, before it is too late." The words echoed in Ilara Jensen's thoughts, like a warning and a challenge rolled into one. The crew aboard the Horizon tried to move past it, but there was no denying that something had changed. The universe beyond their homeworld was no longer a vast, unexplored frontier. It was a place where their presence was known, and possibly unwanted. Ilara stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the stars as the ship charted its course deeper into the unknown reaches of space. The calm was deceiving. She could feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable. The crew went about their duties, but there was an unspoken unease between them. They were no longer just explorers. They were intruders in a realm far older and more dangerous than they had imagined. "We've arrived at the edge of the Lyra constellation," Captain, Commander Jason Quinn announced, his voice breaking the silence. He was at his station, analyzing the navigation data, but his eyes were focused on the dark void beyond. "We're just shy of the coordinates where the signal originated." Ilara nodded. "Open the communications channel. Let's see if we can pick up anything more." Quinn complied, and the hum of the ship's communication systems filled the room. The crew waited in tense silence, eyes darting to the console as the static built. And then, there it was again. The same transmission, crackling and distorted but unmistakably clear. "You are still here. Why do you persist, humans? You are not meant for this. Turn back, or face the consequences." A cold shiver ran down Ilara's spine. The words were the same, but this time, there was something more menacing about the tone. There was no more subtlety, just a direct warning. The universe beyond their home was alive with power, and it was willing to destroy anything that threatened its domain. "We have to respond," Quinn said, his voice tight. "We can't just sit here and ignore this. Someone, or something, is out there watching us." "I agree," Ilara replied. Her mind raced, weighing their options. Earth had no answers for this, no plans for dealing with an unknown enemy that clearly possessed technology far beyond humanity's. "But we need more data. Keep monitoring the signal. Let's see if we can pinpoint its source." The crew worked quickly, analyzing every piece of data they had collected. But the more they searched, the less they understood. The signal appeared to be coming from somewhere inside the Lyra constellation itself, but there were no known planets or colonies that could explain its origin. It was as if the message had been sent from nowhere, or from everywhere. And then, as if in response to their efforts, the ship's sensors flared to life. Something had appeared, a massive, looming presence that had not been there moments before. The stars around them seemed to bend and twist as an enormous shadow appeared in the distance, a vessel, ancient and vast, cutting through the fabric of space like a spear aimed directly at them. Ilara's heart skipped a beat as the enormity of the situation hit her like a physical blow. "What is that?" she whispered, unable to look away from the approaching anomaly. "It's impossible," Quinn said, his voice shaking. "That ship is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not even a ship, more like a living organism, but made of metal and energy, all at once." The crew stared in awe and terror as the massive object drifted closer. It was alive, sentient, and it was coming for them. A low hum echoed through the ship, vibrating the walls and floor. The signal flared again, louder now, almost as if it were coming from the very ship itself. Ilara felt a sharp, unnatural pressure in her head, like an alien presence trying to reach inside her mind. And then, a voice boomed inside her skull. "You have entered our domain. You will not leave." The voice lingered, searing into Ilara's mind, its icy resonance reverberating through every fiber of her being. "You have entered our domain. You will not leave." The words were clear, a declaration of intent from something far beyond their understanding. Her fingers trembled on the console as she struggled to maintain her composure. The crew, likewise, were paralyzed by the unseen weight of the presence that loomed just outside their starship. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but Ilara knew it was too late for that. There was no running from what had found them. "Captain," Quinn's voice was tight, barely a whisper. "What do we do?" Ilara took a deep breath, her mind racing through every protocol, every tactical scenario. But there were no manuals for this, no spacefaring handbook to tell them how to deal with a being that could reach inside their minds and bend reality itself. The horizon was the best humanity had to offer, but against an entity like this, it felt like nothing more than a toy drifting in the void. "We hold our ground," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of fear churning inside her. Prepare for anything. Helm, keep us steady. Communications, continue trying to establish a dialogue. As if on cue, the enormous ship, the living, breathing anomaly, shifted, its presence now undeniable, dominating their senses. The massive vessel pulsed with energy, a swirling blend of metal, organic tissue, and crackling power. And then, without warning, it spoke again, this time with a clarity that left no room for doubt. This is the final warning. Cease your exploration. Return to Earth, or we will ensure you never reach home. Ilara felt her pulse quicken. The message was clear, an ultimatum. But behind the icy words, something else flickered. A subtle hint of something almost personal. It was as though the entity knew them, had studied them, perhaps even anticipated their arrival. Captain, Quinn said, breaking through her thoughts, we're receiving a transmission. It's human. Ilara's eyes shot to him, her heart skipping a beat. What do you mean, human? Somehow, it's a message from Earth. A signal we missed earlier, encrypted and delayed, but definitely human in origin. Ilara's pulse surged with new urgency. Could it be possible? Could there be someone out there who knew what this entity was, or at least had some kind of understanding about it? She grabbed the comms panel and motioned for Quinn to open the channel. The screen flickered before an image materialized. A face, a familiar one. General Natalie Drake, the leader of Earth's military faction, appeared on the screen. Her expression was grim, but there was a determined fire in her eyes. Ilara, she said, her voice crackling through the static. I've been expecting this call, and I'm sure you're not thrilled to hear from me right now. But the truth is, the Voidborn know exactly who we are, and they've been watching us for far longer than any of us realized. The shock of the revelation hit Ilara like a thunderclap. Voidborn. They were real. The very name had been whispered among Earth's top officials, dismissed as a myth, a bedtime story used to scare the public into submission. But here, in the cold dark of space, those myths were suddenly alive and deadly. Voidborn, Ilara repeated, almost to herself. But what are they? Why are they attacking us? General Drake's face hardened. We don't have all the answers yet, but we know enough to realize that humanity is being washed. For centuries, we've been the subject of their scrutiny, though no one dared to believe it. They're ancient, far older than any civilization we know. And they own the stars. Every move we make is a risk to them, and you've made the greatest one yet. Ilara felt a sinking feeling in her chest. They had thought they were pioneers, setting foot in places no human had ever gone before. But now, she realized they had been playing with fire, stepping into the domain of gods, gods who had no intention of sharing their power. We're not backing down, Ilara said, her voice cold with determination. If they want us to leave, they'll have to make us. Drake's image flickered again, and a hint of a smile appeared on her lips. I was hoping you'd say that, because I've already sent a team of our best operatives into the Voidborn's territory. They're ready to act, and they'll be coming to your aid. But you need to hold on. Whatever happens, don't let them break you. Humanity's future is on the line. The transmission ended, and Ilara stood in stunned silence for a moment. There was a faint hum in the air, the presence of the alien ship still pressing on them, watching. But now, there was a spark of something else, something she hadn't felt before. Rebellion. The Voidborn had underestimated humanity. They had no idea who they were dealing with. It was time to make them learn. The space around the horizon was dead silent, the vast emptiness pressing in as though the cosmos itself was holding its breath. The alien ship remained motionless in the distance, an imposing, organic monstrosity that dwarfed everything they knew. For a brief moment, Ilara allowed herself a fleeting thought. Could this be the end for humanity's bold venture into the stars? But she pushed the thought aside quickly. Fear had no place here, not while there was still a chance. We're receiving another transmission, Quinn said, his voice tight with tension. It's coming directly from the Voidborn ship. Ilara braced herself as the message played. The words were colder this time, laced with an eerie finality. This is your last warning. Humanity's expansion will be stopped here. We will not allow you to corrupt the order of the universe. Stand down or face annihilation. The voice, though distorted, seemed to crackle with immense power, an energy so ancient and incomprehensible that Ilara could almost feel it in the marrow of her bones. The crew was listening intently, waiting for her command. We're not backing down, Ilara said, her voice steady but carrying a steel edge. Get the shields up, prepare for evasive maneuvers, and activate the FTL jump engines. We're taking the fight to them. Commander Quinn nodded, already barking orders to the crew. The tension was palpable, everyone moving with swift precision, as the ship's weapons were readied. There was no time for fear now, no time for hesitation. The horizon had been built for this moment. For humanity's survival, they had no choice but to fight. Suddenly, the ship rocked violently, as if caught in the grip of some invisible force. The crew stumbled, the lights flickering as alarms blared through the ship's halls. Ilara held onto the nearest console to steady herself, her eyes scanning the readouts. Something was pulling them in, some kind of gravitational anomaly, or worse, a weapon designed to rip them apart. Report, Ilara barked, her voice sharp. Gravity well. The Voidborn ship is creating a destabilizing effect on space-time around us. Quinn's voice came through, filled with urgency. They're trying to trap us in their gravitational pull. We can't escape with the FTL drive at full power. The ship's engines are being overloaded by the strain. A deep thrumming hum echoed through the walls, growing louder, shaking the ship. The Horizon's engines struggled against the invisible force, but the strain was immense. Their power was weakening. They couldn't break free. Do you want to keep fighting? Quinn asked, his voice still calm, but there was a flicker of something else. Fear, desperation, perhaps even resignation. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest, but she steadied herself. We don't have a choice. We keep fighting, or we die. And I refuse to go down without giving humanity a chance. But just as she spoke, the ship was hit again, harder this time. The entire vessel groaned as though it were being torn apart. The crew was thrown into chaos, alarms ringing out everywhere. The bridge crew scrambled to maintain control of the ship, but it was becoming clear. The Voidborn were toying with them. We can't hold on much longer, the chief engineer shouted from below deck. The ship's hull is compromised. We're losing power. We'll be sitting ducks in a matter of minutes. Damn it. Ilara swore under her breath. Her mind raced, but she refused to panic. This wasn't over. Not yet. Humanity had faced overwhelming odds before and won. The memory of Earth's wars, its struggles, its darkest hours, were never far from her thoughts. Commander Quinn, Ilara said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Activate the secondary thrusters. We're getting out of here. Full power to the engines. Now. Quinn hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. He rushed to the controls, his fingers flying over the panels as the engines whined and sputtered. Another hit from the Voidborn ship caused a violent shudder throughout the horizon, but the crew held firm. They refused to be broken. The stars outside the ship began to blur as the thrusters powered to life, the ship groaning with effort. They were on the edge of something, either victory or total destruction. But Ilara knew one thing for certain. This was the tipping point. The Voidborn wanted them dead, but humanity's will to survive was stronger than any cosmic force. A surge of energy rippled through the ship as the remaining thrusters powered forward, pushing them into motion. The Voidborn vessel didn't give up, however. It followed, like a shadow clinging to them, relentless and merciless. Captain, Quinn said, his voice sharp, we're out of range of the gravity well, but they're not stopping. They're closing in fast. Ilara's eyes narrowed, calculating their options. The Voidborn weren't just trying to neutralize the Horizon. They were trying to break humanity's spirit, to make an example of them. But what they didn't realize was that Earth's people didn't break. They adapted, they fought back, and they survived. "We're not running," Ilara said with finality. "We're going to make them wish they never crossed us, set a course for their ship's weak point. If we hit them where it hurts, we might stand a chance." The crew looked at her with renewed determination. Ilara's voice had sparked something in them, a fierce, unyielding drive. Humanity had always been the underdog, but now, more than ever, they were willing to fight for their place in the stars. As the Horizon surged forward, the crew prepared for the impossible, a battle against the ancient and powerful Voidborn. The stakes were higher than ever before, but humanity's will to survive could never be underestimated. The Horizon rocketed forward, its engines thrumming with all the power it could muster. The Voidborn ship, a shadow of terror in the distance, was no longer just an observation. It was now a looming, tangible threat. Its dark presence dwarfed the Horizon, but Ilara Jensen wasn't about to let humanity's first starship be cowed by this ancient terror. "We've got to hit them before they hit us." Quinn's voice cut through the bridge's tense silence, his eyes locked on the view screen. The Voidborn vessel was closing in rapidly, its immense form distorting the stars as it approached. Ilara's mind raced. They were running out of time, and every second counted. The Voidborn ship's size and power were overwhelming, but she'd been trained to fight under impossible circumstances. The underdogs were humanity's specialty, and she intended to show the universe just how dangerous Earth's people could be. "Helm," she snapped, "get us within firing range. Weapons, I want everything we have on that ship's energy core. If we can hit their power systems, we might stand a chance. I don't care if it's a long shot. We take it." A tense silence filled the room as the crew scrambled to carry out the orders. The ship's engines groaned in protest as they pushed harder than they were designed to, the ship vibrating with the effort. The hum of the energy shields grew louder, crackling as they absorbed the strain of the ship's rapid acceleration. "Shields holding steady," Lieutenant Yasmin reported, her hands dancing over the control panels. "But we're losing power to secondary systems. The Voidborn ship is jamming our communications. We're flying blind at this point, Captain." Ilara nodded. "Keep pushing. We can't afford to slow down now." The view screen flickered as the immense Voidborn ship grew ever closer, its hull gleaming like a black mirror against the deep expanse of space. The ship was no longer just an object. It was alive, a living entity forged from a combination of biological and technological wonders. Its outer structure pulsed and shifted, as if the ship itself was breathing. And with every moment that passed, the pressure on the Horizon intensified. The alien vessel sent out wave after wave of powerful energy pulses, attempting to destabilize their trajectory, throwing the ship into a violent spin. "We're being hit again," the engineer called out. "Hull integrity at 30%. We can't take another hit like that." Ilara's heart raced, but her resolve only hardened. "All hands, brace for impact," she ordered. "We need to hold on just a little longer." Another blast rocked the ship, this time sending a tremor through the bridge that nearly threw Ilara from her seat. Sparks flew from the consoles as they were jolted by the force of the impact. The lights flickered, and the hum of the engines became erratic. The crew members held on, fighting to regain control, but the Voidborn ship was relentless. "We're almost in range, Captain," Quinn shouted, his face tense with concentration. "Just a little further." Ilara's pulse quickened. They were so close. The Horizon was falling apart around them, but if they could just breach that ship's defenses, they might be able to turn the tide. The Voidborn were powerful, yes, but they didn't understand the human will to survive. They didn't understand how humanity had faced extinction countless times and always managed to come out swinging. "Prepare to fire," Ilara called out, her voice steadied despite the chaos around them. "All weapons, target their power core. Now." The weapons systems hummed as they charged, the air thick with anticipation. Ilara's heart thudded in her chest as the firing sequence was initiated. Her hands clenched on the armrests of her chair as the countdown began in her mind. One shot. One chance. Quinn's voice broke through her thoughts. Firing. Now. A series of brilliant, violent flashes lit up the dark void as the energy blasts from the Horizon's weapons rained down on the Voidborn ship. The massive alien vessel shuddered violently, its hull warping and twisting as the energy strikes made contact. But the Voidborn ship wasn't defeated. Not yet. The massive organic structure seemed to absorb the blasts, its surface shifting to deflect the hits. But the Horizon didn't stop. No, they couldn't afford to. They would break through. And then an explosion, deafening, heart-stopping, ripped through the quiet of space. Their core. We hit it. Yasmin yelled, her eyes wide in disbelief. It's destabilizing. The Voidborn ship is losing power. The crew erupted into a chorus of cheers, but Ilara's face remained hard. It wasn't over yet. The Voidborn were ancient. They would fight to the bitter end. We need to finish this, she said, her voice cutting through the celebrations. Get us into their breach. We're going in. The crew worked frantically, pulling the ship forward despite the damage they had sustained. The Voidborn ship was now in chaos, its vast form flickering with erratic energy surges, but it still fought back. It wasn't going to just fall. The Voidborn were not so easily defeated. But humanity had already proven something in that brief moment of victory. Even when the odds seemed impossible, even when the enemy seemed invincible, humanity would always rise. Ilara set her jaw, eyes fixed on the growing rupture in the Voidborn ship's hull. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The Horizon lurched forward, its damaged hull creaking under the strain as it surged toward the gaping wound in the Voidborn ship. The massive vessel seemed to pulse with frantic energy, like the heart of a dying giant, desperate to fight back. The void around them was filled with blinding flashes as the Voidborn ship's energy core struggled to stabilize, sending shockwaves through space with each unstable burst. We're going in, Captain, Quinn shouted over the rising chaos in the bridge. His knuckles were white as he gripped the helm controls. Brace yourselves. This is going to be rough. The crew held on as the ship groaned, the hull shaking violently with every pulse of energy from the alien behemoth. Every system on the Horizon screamed in protest, its shields barely holding against the cascading energy waves that lanced out from the enemy ship. It was a fight for survival, a fight for a future they had no right to expect, but would take nonetheless. The breach in the Voidborn ship loomed larger, growing as the Horizon closed the distance. Ilara could feel the heat from the rupturing core on her skin, even through the insulated walls of the bridge. But she kept her eyes forward, focused. Steady, everyone, she said, her voice firm despite the sweat beading on her forehead. We get through that breach, and we take the fight to them. This is our best chance. Quinn's face was pale, sweat dripping down his brow, but his hands moved with a practiced calm. He turned to her. We've got one shot at this, Captain. If we don't make it through that hole in the next 30 seconds, the energy fluctuations will tear us apart. Our shields can't take another hit like that. Ilara nodded, steeling herself. Do it. The ship jolted again as they entered the heart of the Voidborn ship, the breach swallowing them whole. The massive void outside was replaced by the terrifying reality inside. A vast, living space, dark and pulsing with unearthly energy. The interior of the alien vessel seemed to breathe, its walls shifting and expanding as though the ship itself was alive, reacting to their intrusion. Incoming, yelled Lieutenant Yasmin, her voice sharp as she worked the sensors. They're launching defensive drones. Small, but highly dangerous. Ilara didn't hesitate. Weapons, engage. Fire everything we've got. The ship shuddered with the release of the Horizon's remaining weapons. Energy blasts tore through the void, striking the smaller Voidborn drones that swarmed toward them like wasps defending a nest. Each shot hit its target, but the drones exploded into clouds of dark energy before scattering, regrouping, and coming at them again, faster this time. The bridge lights flickered ominously as another shockwave from the Voidborn ship rattled the crew. "Captain," Quinn called out, his voice rising in panic. "The core is destabilizing even further. We need to move. Now." Ilara looked up from the chaos unfolding on the view screen and met Quinn's eyes. She could see the fear in his gaze, but she couldn't afford the luxury of doubt. The Voidborn ship was collapsing in on itself. Every instinct screamed at her to escape before they were swallowed whole, but if they left now, they would never get another chance. Earth would be doomed. "We're going deeper," she said, her voice cutting through the tension in the bridge. "Head toward the center. The core might be the only place where we can find a way to shut them down for good." Quinn opened his mouth to protest, but saw the resolve in her eyes and nodded grimly. He veered the ship to the left, guiding the horizon deeper into the wreckage of the Voidborn ship. The environment around them grew stranger by the second. The walls of the alien ship were no longer solid metal, but something far more organic. Tendrils of dark energy snaked through the air, writhing like veins, pulsating with malevolent life. As the ship moved deeper, the air itself seemed to hum, vibrating with an alien frequency. "Captain," Quinn warned, his voice barely above a whisper, "whatever this place is, it's not just a ship. It's alive." Ilara's eyes narrowed as she studied the alien structure surrounding them. The ship's center was still some distance away, but she could sense the danger growing. The Voidborn's presence was pressing in on them from all sides, intangible, pervasive. She could almost feel the ship's mind, its malice pressing against her consciousness like an invisible hand. "Whatever it is, it's trying to break us," Ilara said, her voice sharp. "We can't let it. Keep moving. Push through." Suddenly, the floor beneath them rumbled as a deep, resonant growl echoed through the ship. It wasn't a sound. They could feel it. The ship seemed to shudder in response to something much larger than the drones or defensive systems. Ilara's stomach clenched. It was as if the very being of the Voidborn ship had recognized them, and it was angry. "Full speed ahead," Ilara ordered, her mind racing. They had to reach the heart of the ship. The core was their only hope. But as they approached the center, the walls around them seemed to come alive, pulsating and closing in. Tentacle-like growths extended from the walls, reaching for the horizon. There was no more time for strategy. This was raw survival. "Captain, they're pulling us in," Quinn shouted. The ship's engines groaned as they fought the overwhelming force pulling them toward the core. Ilara gritted her teeth, adrenaline flooding her system. "Hold on. Whatever happens next, the horizon will not fall here." The roar of the engines was deafening as the horizon plunged deeper into the heart of the Voidborn ship. The walls seemed to close in around them, organic growths writhing like living tendrils, pulling the ship toward a singular, glowing core. Ilara could feel the weight of the ship's struggle. Every system was being pushed to its limits, every engine groaning under the strain. The very air inside the vessel was thick with an alien energy, the temperature rising to unbearable levels. But they had no choice. This was their last chance. "Hold course," Ilara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She gripped the armrests of her seat tightly, trying to steady her own racing pulse. The ship was shaking violently now, as if the very structure of the Voidborn ship was protesting their presence. But Ilara had a single focus. The core. It was their only hope. "Warning. The ship is being pulled into the core's gravitational field," Yasmin reported, her hands flying across the controls. "Hull integrity is critical. If we don't stop soon, we'll be crushed." "I'm aware," Ilara snapped, eyes fixed on the view screen as the glowing, pulsating core drew closer. "We're going in." The walls around them grew darker, the strange energy that suffused the Voidborn ship thrumming with increasing intensity. It wasn't just a ship, it was an organism, a living thing with thoughts, desires, and a will to fight back. Ilara could almost feel the malevolent intelligence watching them, analyzing them, learning from them. "They're adapting," Quinn muttered, his knuckles white on the console. "The ship's systems are changing. They're throwing everything they've got at us now." Indeed, the ship around them was shifting. The walls expanded and contracted, morphing in impossible ways. More of the tendrils reached out, trying to ensnare the horizon, but the crew fought to keep their ship in motion, narrowly avoiding the deadly appendages that would tear them apart if they made contact. "They're activating some sort of energy cannon," Lieutenant Yasmin called out urgently. "It's charging. If that thing hits us, we'll be vaporized." "Get us past it," Ilara barked. "Whatever it takes." But the Voidborn ship wasn't going to make it easy. As they neared the core, the ship itself seemed to awaken with violent intent. A deep rumbling shook the very foundation of the horizon, and the energy cannon fired. The blast of searing energy shot past them, narrowly missing the ship, but the force of it sent the horizon spiraling out of control. Sparks flew from the consoles as the ship bucked and twisted in space. "Stabilizing," Quinn shouted, struggling to bring the ship back under control. "We're still on course." The core was within striking distance now, huge, glowing with unnatural light, thrumming with raw energy. There was no turning back. "Ilara, we can't survive another hit like that," Quinn said, his voice strained. "The ship is failing. Then we make sure it's the Voidborn who go down, not us," Ilara replied, her voice resolute. "Get us into that core. If we can't shut it down, we'll destroy it." Quinn hesitated for just a second, his eyes meeting hers. There was fear there, but also something else. Determination. He nodded. "Prepare for impact." He called to the crew. "We're making our final push." The ship lurched forward, the space around them warping as the gravitational field of the core grew stronger. The alien tendrils reached out again, but this time, the crew fought back, laser beams and plasma shots lighting up the walls as they cut through the living mass. The ship was screaming in protest now, every system crying for relief. Ilara could feel it in her bones. The ship, like its crew, was nearing its breaking point, but they were too close to turn back now. "Almost there," Yasmin shouted, her hands a blur as she worked the controls. "Just a little longer, Captain." Ilara gripped the edge of her seat, her gaze locked on the core, which seemed to pulse with malevolent life. If they didn't do something fast, they would be consumed, swallowed by the very entity they sought to destroy. The Voidborn ship was alive, and it had no intention of letting them leave. "Now, Quinn," Ilara shouted. "Activate the core disruptor." Quinn slammed his fist down on the final switch. A low hum reverberated through the ship as the disruptor activated, sending a pulse of energy toward the heart of the Voidborn ship. At first, nothing happened. The core continued to throb ominously, the energy growing even more volatile. But then, there was a tremor, faint at first, and then an explosion of light as the disruptor connected with the core. The Voidborn ship screamed, a sound that reverberated through the fabric of space itself. The core shuddered violently, and the entire ship began to break apart. The tendrils retracted as the vessel's power systems collapsed. But the ship was not done yet. "Brace for impact," Quinn yelled. The horizon was still being dragged toward the core, but now it was a battle for survival, with the core destabilizing around them. Energy flared out of control, and the walls of the Voidborn ship cracked open, splintering like glass. The ship's remaining defenses crumbled, and the massive entity that had once been the Voidborn ship began to collapse inward. "We're going to make it out," Ilara shouted, her voice a rallying cry for her crew. "Everyone, hang on." The final battle wasn't over yet, but it was theirs to win. The tremors rocked the horizon one last time, as the Voidborn ship began to collapse into itself, its ancient, living form disintegrating under the pressure of the disruptor's pulse. The walls of the ship cracked and splintered like bones breaking, the entire structure beginning to implode. Energy beams, erratic and uncontrolled, sliced through the remnants of the Voidborn's defenses as the ship's core sputtered and flared, casting a blinding light that illuminated the vast expanse of space. Ilara's hands clenched the armrests of her chair, eyes locked on the view screen. The horizon was tumbling, spiraling uncontrollably as the ship's gravitational field pulled them inward. The remaining tendrils of the Voidborn ship lashed out, desperately trying to ensnare them, but the power of the disruptor had torn the heart of the beast apart. Pull up, Quinn shouted, his voice strained as he fought to regain control of the ship's descent into the dying core. Sparks flew across the control panel, and alarms blared as systems failed one by one. "We're not gonna make it," Yasmin cried out, panic creeping into her voice. "The ship's too far gone." Ilara didn't answer immediately. Her gaze never left the screen, her mind racing. They were so close, but the pull of the Voidborn core was stronger than any ship's engines could overcome. They could either be consumed by the collapsing wreckage or find a way to escape the deadly implosion. "We will make it," Ilara finally said, voice steely with resolve. "Quinn, aim for that breach. Full power to the engines. We're punching through." Quinn's fingers flew over the controls. The ship's engines sputtered in protest, barely holding together under the strain. Aiming for the breach, he muttered through gritted teeth. "But I need more power, Ilara." The ship was shuddering as if it, too, knew its life was drawing to a close. The Voidborn vessel, now a collapsing mess of organic material and advanced technology, was too powerful to be simply destroyed, but it was too fragile to withstand this kind of instability. The core was consuming itself, and the resulting explosion would obliterate everything in its wake. The horizon lurched once more, this time violently, as an energy wave from the core slammed into them, sending the ship into a wild spin. Ilara was thrown from her seat, but she scrambled back to her feet, eyes wide, heart pounding. "Status report," she shouted. "We're still alive, Captain." Yasmin's voice was shaky but clear. "We've got a chance. The breach is almost within reach." "Then we take it," Ilara shouted, her command resolute. "We make it through there. We get out alive." The ship jerked again as the last of the Voidborn vessel's structural integrity finally crumbled, the entire ship's form buckling under the pressure of its dying core. The horizon was thrown forward, caught in the gravitational pull, but the crew fought to keep it aligned, steering it toward the single opening that might offer an escape. "Now," Ilara screamed. Quinn slammed his fist down on the final control, flooding the engines with every ounce of power they had left. The ship surged forward like a bullet, racing toward the breach. For a brief, terrifying moment, Ilara thought they wouldn't make it. The horizon seemed too fragile, too broken. But then they burst through the breach. Space outside was stark and silent, the stars shining coldly in the distance as the massive Voidborn ship collapsed behind them in a brilliant, blinding explosion. The shockwave rippled outward, but the crew of the Horizon had cleared the event horizon just in time, the blackened remnants of the enemy ship flashing behind them like a dying star. The crew was silent for a moment, the only sound the ragged breathing of those who had survived the impossible. They had done it. We're out," Yasmin whispered, disbelief tinging her voice. "We actually made it." Ilara sat back in her chair, heart still racing as the weight of their victory began to sink in. Her eyes swept across the bridge. Each member of the crew, battered and worn, but alive. They had won. Against an enemy so ancient, so powerful, they had stood their ground. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "We made it," she repeated, the words tasting like a miracle. Quinn smiled weakly, his hand still shaking as he maneuvered the Horizon into a safer orbit. "Yeah, Captain. And now we've got a whole galaxy to explore." Ilara turned her gaze to the view screen, watching as the stars stretched out before them, the endless void of space opening wide. The fight against the Voidborn was only the beginning, and while humanity had faced near extinction, they had emerged victorious. There was more to come, more unknowns, more dangers, more opportunities. But now, humanity was no longer a species cowering under the shadow of the unknown. They were explorers, conquerors, and survivors, and they would continue to push forward into the stars, into the unknown, for Earth, for their future. Ilara, there's something you need to see, Yasmin said, her voice cutting through the quiet. Ilara looked up, curiosity piqued. What is it? Yasmin turned the display toward her, a signal, faint but growing stronger. It wasn't from Earth. It was from somewhere out there, deep in the void. A signal. From another civilization. Ilara's heart skipped a beat. The galaxy was bigger than they had ever imagined. And now, humanity had a place in it.